Hello again and welcome back for what's likely the last video for 2021. This edition is titled Ghost 2021, Why is Everything So Slippery? Today's video once again takes us to Fallen Timber South in the Ghost Public Land Use Zone. Myself and my son James, who was just staring into my camera there, along with our friends Juan, Tim, and Devin, or Other Devin, as referred to from the previous videos, are with us for this one. We tackled a lot of single track on this trip. I believe we mapped out roughly 63 kilometers of single track over the course of 2 days. So it was not a whole lot of track that we'd been on before. It was actually a lot of fun. Another interesting change was that we had quite a lot of rain on Friday night. We rode all day Friday in beautiful weather, but then got dumped on pretty good on Friday night, and then it continued to rain on and off throughout the day on Saturday. And something with all the trips that I've done into this area is I've never really ridden in the rain. I have ridden after the rain, but never really in terrain like this, and it was eye-opening. I spent a lot of time on the ground, which you'll see is covered throughout this video, although I didn't catch one span of time where I think I went down probably 5 to 7 times in the course of about 15 minutes, pretty hard. It was a learning lesson. Apparently I'm not great riding in the rain on slippery logs and roots, but something different to try, something to get good at. I'm not sure that I'd want to do it every day, but it was really helpful in developing skills. It'd be interesting to hear comments from anybody that's ridden both in the West Coast, in the slimier, wet terrain there, and then again in the more eastern Rockies, where the terrain's a little bit harsher, but maybe isn't as regularly slippery, as to whether the fact that it's dry some of the time and wet other times makes it more or less slippery than it is on the West Coast. I'd also like to throw in, for informational purposes, you'll hear me a lot talking in the background. I have a helmet communicator with my son, also with my daughter when we ride with her, but with the new bike that I'm on, I've switched over to a 2008 CRF450X with a quieter muffler, and just generally not riding as fast doing the single track. You tend to hear my voice a lot. Pay not too much attention to what we're saying. It sometimes come across as modestly crazy because you only get half of the conversation, but it's actually been a blast being able to talk with the kids, and Juan was actually able to patch into us as well. He had a similar comm to us. So it's just fun to be able to communicate, give people warnings, egg them on, harass them while they're riding. In this portion of the video, I've swapped bikes with Other Devin. I am riding a CRF250X, and I apologize for Devin for what's about to happen here. I wiped out into a tree with his bike. I'm not sure I told him that, but now he's got video evidence, so he can send the bill in later. In most of the videos so far, you probably noticed that I've been talking about the rain, but it hasn't actually been that slick. But this next portion of the video is after the rainfall. It's significantly more slick, more depressing. I got kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit on one of our first rides in the rain. I had a bunch of problems with washing out the front end on diagonal routes, and I just couldn't get my head squared around it. I was having a really rough day. I kept blaming the front tire, but I'm pretty sure that it wasn't that. It was probably just me. Maybe the tire, but who really knows. I'll blame the tire anyway. But I genuinely went down more than I'd gone down in a very long time, even through races. I just could not get my confidence up, and fighting with the bike. This is only my 3rd ride on the new CRF450X, and it feels a lot like the 250X, but it is a little bit different, but not substantially, and certainly not enough to justify all the crashes that I had. This is the portion of the video where I got to give full credit to James. You can see him struggling a little bit in the background there, but this a little bit of a climb over a route and spraying me as I came up there to help him. But through all this terrain, he really did not crash any more than any of us. This is his 2nd ride in the mountains where we've really been into more of the thick of it, and really the first one where he's been into full men's-sized terrain. He's only 14, and he's learning so incredibly quickly on the bike now. I think is arguably faster than me in some of the sections, maybe not all of the sections, but you really got to give full props to him through the weekend. He really manned up and fought with his bike. Didn't end up upside down like this too often. That was more my job this weekend. I genuinely don't think he crashed as much as I did. I was having some head issues just with confidence, but full credit to him. This is not easy terrain, and it's his first go in with this group, and he really held his own. I will make a small caveat with that crash a minute ago where I ended up upside down. When I was on the 250, I cut down the seat probably 3.5, 4 inches. It is practically painted on cover on that thing. It is hemorrhoid inducing. However, with my short 27.5 inch inseam, it's almost essential. It's really hard to do single track terrain when you have really short legs on a really tall bike. Even my Husqvarna sat down quite a bit lower. The 450 still has the full height seat, and I've got the proper springs for my weight in it, so it's got roughly about a 37.5 inch, 38 inch seat, and it's quite wide. And I'm sure for those of you that can do basic math, 27 is a lot shorter than 38. I can actually sit on the bike and point my toes towards the ground with the bike centered, and neither of my toes touch the ground. So until I get that seat cut down a little bit, it's going to be a little bit harder for me to struggle through this stuff. It's been nice in this area. A lot of the single track has been kind of exploding over the last couple of years. It's probably the fifth or sixth year that I've been going to this area. It's really the last 2 years where it seems like it's becoming easily accessible. I don't know if it's just that we didn't know its location prior to that, or whether it's just being fresh cut, but it's really great to be able to go places where the quads can't get. The trails are maintained a little bit better. They're not gutted out. There's no deep pits. There's nobody sitting there digging wheel trenches. In mud pits, the hill climbs tend to be a lot more fun. They're a lot more turning left and right. You'll notice throughout the video that they are tight. This section here is actually quite open, but you'll notice through most of it that we're bobbing and weaving, kind of twisting your handlebars through gaps. It's a ton of fun, but it is super difficult. But I really wouldn't have it any other way. It's been a load of fun. I do tend to like riding pretty open desert as well. That's probably by a small margin my favorite riding, but the single track is really growing on me. A couple of weird moments coming up here. The first one's just Juan and James trying to get underneath this branch. I don't know ultimately why I found it so funny. It just seemed really funny to me. Juan's backpack got hooked up on it. I don't know why anybody just didn't try to lift the log a little bit. That's ultimately what I did, or lift the tree a little bit and get it out of the way. It was more fun to watch people struggle over it or underneath it. The next video here, I've watched this video probably 10 times. I still can't figure out what happened. I'm about to go into the little river here. Everybody else made it over this little bridge fine, but I came to a stop, and I think what happens is the log that my front tire was up against falls through, and I just kind of lose the bike. It looks like I just kind of launched my bike off of the log, but I can't figure out what happened. So we paused on the way back. I'm not sure if this happened as a result of the last crash, but I kept smelling burnt plastic, and as it turned out, my radiator fan had come off and had melted to my exhaust. There's always going to be a couple of casualties when you crash continuously. That was pretty much the only damage to my bike. There's a little bit more to Devin's and a little bit here, but overall, considering the amount of banging around in the trees we did, we actually got through pretty well. No flats or anything, which we were pretty thankful for. Everybody's bike was pretty reliable, which is nice. I've always loved this hill climb. I think I've showed it in a couple of videos before. I generally get up, but there's a couple of times where I've come up short. It's really hard to see, but the run up to this, there's a bunch of really hard, shallow, or hard edged whoops that are probably about 8 inches to 10 inches deep, that it makes keeping your momentum going as you're fighting through that underbrush almost impossible. So the transition up into this clear section is quite difficult. And it does get relatively steep, and kind of has a little bit of a lip at the top that you have to get over. But I just love the hill climb for whatever reason. It's got a great view from the top too. It's always great to have Juan along on these trips. You can see him coming up the hill here, but his level of enthusiasm is always contagious. He always brings a great deal of joy and laughing to the trip. It's good to see him coming out. I think it's his second or third time with us now. This hill climb here, it's not the steepest or the tightest we've begun going on, but it's a good example of how tight it can get. There's just a lot of wiggling your handlebars around. It seems like you never quite get a straight shot up that you do with the side-by-side trails. The side-by-side trails can be fun because you get like a full kilometer, 2 kilometer pull up a hill, but the single track ones, you just fight for every inch, and it makes it a lot of fun. These little rock gardens along the top, I think that they must be placed there. I can't imagine that that's natural formation given that it's at the top of the hill, but it's hard to go slowly through it, but because of how tight it is, it's hard to get any speed, so it's pretty challenging. You got to stay up on the foot pegs, fight with the bike a little bit, but I genuinely love crawling through here. I feel like it's a real good challenge for us. One of the things I've been trying to include more is footage of people riding in front of me. This clip coming up here will have James going. Most of the people I think that watch these videos are other bikers, friends that we know, and so on. But for the people that aren't bikers, it's sometimes hard to gauge how slippery it is and what goes on in the bike and what goes on as you're feeling. But you'll see James slide out there. This is in the dry, and he's got good tires on there. And that route isn't even that diagonal, but it's a good example, and this is another good example right here of how slippery it can be when those logs get off kilter a little bit, because he's got good balance. He's also got strong knees, apparently. But it doesn't take much once you start sliding laterally along the logs, and you are gone in a hurry. You just get dumped. You can see it from previous crashes in the video as well with mine. It's instantaneous. It's not like most motocross crashes or things where you can kind of feel it coming to a certain degree. They're not instantaneous. I mean, they're horrific, but they're not instantaneous. Most of these ones where I lose it on the routes, you're honestly on the ground before you even know what's going to happen or what's happening. What we have here is incident number 2. You can see the smoke or mist coming off of Devin's bike in the branch that's laying down there on my right. It went right underneath his radiator and pulled the coolant hose right out of the bottom of the radiator. Emptied it pretty good onto him. So overall, not much damage. We were able to fill him up with water and get him home. But you'll see as the video comes to a close here, even Devin crashes, although he usually has the good sense to do it away from us where we can't see him. But in this case, he was out in front, so we all got to point and laugh at him as we went by.